starting back with another couple Road to 2200 Rapid games. And in this one, I got another bad game. But also, I have the black pieces in this game, and I also have the black pieces in the next game. And I think I had the black pieces in the last at least 2 or 3 games. So I guess I just get black every game, which is kind of unusual and maybe cruel, but uh, getting good practice with the black pieces. This game had absolutely nothing good to take away from it. It was really, really boring. I was passive the whole game, and then I blundered in end game that should probably be equal. But so we just had an opening, trade a bunch of pieces. Uh, didn't really matter all that much. I was just passive. He's got the two bishops. Long story short, we get to an end game here where I'm probably equal, but I'm actually losing here. But after knight takes b5, bishop takes e5, I'm actually equal here. But he should probably, instead of bishop takes e5, d6 should just win on the spot, I think. But bishop takes e5, I played really passive game, and then all of a sudden I have equal drawing chances here. So f6, bishop f4, and then I think what I need to do here is I'm down a pawn. I need to either play something like knight c3 uh, and hit him with the fork, which would make a lot of sense. Something like knight c3, king f1, knight takes d5 looks pretty good. Looks like I should probably be able to draw this position pretty easily, not even down any material. What I shouldn't do probably is what I did in the game. I played pawn to c3, and then all of a sudden this pawn is like just a weakness because it's not really ready to promote yet. I don't have my king over there to help it promote. This knight is not going to be enough to help it promote, and this king is going to be quick to get over here, so I think I'm just kind of throwing away a pawn by doing this. Also, knight c3 was just a fork that wins a pawn back, so I should probably see that, but c3, and then my position kind of just collapses. G5, bishop c1, king f7, and then it's like he kind of just gets his king over and corrals the pawn, and then my knight is a horrible piece, and I just danced my knight around like an idiot, and then hung all of my pawns. So that was pretty much it. Not really a whole lot to take away from that game. I just played a really passive opening, and then just got slowly ground down after I missed my relatively easy drawing chances. I just resigned here because he's just gonna push these pawns down my throat. So, not the best game. But in the next game, I actually played a lot better. So there are some good games and there are some bad games. This game was not my most ambitious game, but you can always improve on them. This game, on the other hand, had a lot more substance to it. So once again, rocking with the black pieces, 2153, playing a 2093. I believe he was 2100 at the time, but I got the black pieces here, and this was a much cleaner game. So d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, and bishop to b4 check. So in this game, we go with the Bogo-Indian defense. Bishop to d2, I go pawn to c5. So all things considered, I think this variation's a bit dubious, but it leads to some interesting positions. So bishop takes b4, c takes b4, and the point is, if white doesn't play a3 and try and get rid of this pawn ends up being kind of a thorn in the queen side that's kind of annoying to deal with. So white chooses to play a3 right away. And after b takes a3, rook takes a3. There's not really any way to hang on to this pawn reliably. So b takes a3 is really the main way to play this for black. Rook takes a3, so this is all logical, looking to use the a file, keep this rook on a good square. I think knight takes a3 is also possible, but rook takes a3 makes a lot of sense. And really white's plan here is just going to be look for queenside expansion, b4, c5, and really just win on the queen side. That's the whole plan. I castle, white goes e3, d6, bishop to d3, knight c6. I'm just developing my pieces. And generally in these structures, I like to go for knight c6, d6, and e5. But in this game, I kind of delayed e5 just a little bit. Sometimes I play it right away. But in this game, after castle, I chose to play pawn to b6. So this is like a useful move that you end up playing in a lot of these lines anyways. You usually play b6 and a5. And sometimes you try and wedge the knight on b4 to stop white from going b4, which makes a lot of sense. But knight to c3 was played, bishop to b7, and only now after white goes pawn to e4, looking to get a big center. Now I strike back with e5. So I think this makes a lot of sense. There are really two options, I would say. I mean, you could leave the tension, which would be very interesting, but I feel like generally white usually plays d takes e5 or d5. d5 is like by far the most common, but in this position, I don't think d5 is all that great because I can play knight b4, and then I can play a5, and I just have a forever grip on the queen side. So let's say knight b4, bishop e2, a5. I just have a complete lockdown on the queen side. And there's really no way for white to play pawn to b4 and c5 and really make any progress over here. So I think black is doing quite well here. In the game, however, I went knight to e7. So I know that knight to b4 is a common theme. Also, knight to b8 is also common. Looking to reposition the knight to d7 and c5. Really, all three of the knight moves are reasonable options outside of knight d4 and knight a5. Knight d4 is probably not a favorable structural transformation, and knight a5 just gets the knight trapped to b4. So knight e7 has a different idea. The idea is I'm going to transfer the knight over here and use it on the king side and try and get a king side attack going. So I'm going to kind of switch my focus a little bit from the queen side to the king side. Now that white is clearly going to go for the queen side expansion, I probably should have gone knight b4, but knight e7 is honestly more of an aggressive way of playing, and knight b4 is way more solid. So b4, knight g6, pawn to g3, trying to keep my knight out of f4, logical move. And now I look to transfer my bishop back over here, now that he's weakened some of his light squares. Queen a1, looking to pile up some pressure on a7. I go bishop to h3, hitting his rook. He's got to do something about that. Rook to c1, and now I play a5. So I didn't want to lose my pawn on a7, so b takes a5, b takes a5. Rook takes a5 might be better, but I kind of want to keep pieces on the board. And, white should probably look to play c5 here. It's kind of a hard move to play in this position, but the engine does like it because it is temporarily giving up a pawn. And the idea is that you want to play knight to d1, maybe reroute the knight to e3, but also just look to pick up this pawn. I've got a lot of weak pawns here. So knight to d1 also hits this pawn on e5. So he's going to be getting his pawn back. But c5 right away is kind of a tough move to play. So in the game, bishop to f1 was played because he didn't like how my bishop was kind of all up in his position. But I think I get a pretty good game after bishop takes f1, king takes f1, and then knight back to d7. So I'm kind of shuffling my knights around. This is kind of logical because I want to play knight to c5, maybe play pawn to a4, maybe play pawn to f5. Really, knight d7 is a multi-purpose move. Knight to b5, knight to c5, rook to e1, defending this pawn on e4, and I go pawn to f5, looking to rip open this f file towards his king. Knight to d2 was played, and here I should really look to play pawn to f4 and just press forward and continue my attack, but I made an inaccuracy here. I played queen to g5. So I was ready to just offer up this pawn on a5 here, and the idea was here I was just going to move my rook away. I also could consider playing rook takes a5, queen takes a5, and then pushing forward with f4 here. But I figured that giving up a pawn here would be perfectly valid because I'm getting a lot of pressure towards his king, and his queen's a bit offside, his knight's offside, and his king's a little bit shaky. But after queen to g5, he plays good move, queen c3, looking to kind of shift the focus. His queen can defend laterally Also, this rook can still capture on a5 at the right time. I go rook to f6, rook takes a5, and then rook to f8. So rook f6 is a good move because it defends d6, maybe wants to come over here at the right time, maybe looks to double. But I kind of overlooked a good move here. So after rook takes a5, rook f8, I overlooked my opponent's resource here that he finds knight takes d6. So this was a very, very strong move. Not only does he get rid of the pawn that defends my knight, so if I take his knight, he's going to take my knight. So these piece trades are going to benefit white. White's got the 2 connected pass pawns, so and he's up a pawn here. Or he's going to be up 2 pawns if we trade these knights. So, if I take his knight and then he takes mine, I'm just going to be getting into a worse endgame, and I'm running out of pieces to attack him with. The other functionality of knight takes d6 is that I can't take on e4 anymore and play rook takes f2, because now this knight on d6 can recapture on e4, versus before, assume white makes a nothing move here, like not queen b3. Let's say rook a7. Now f takes e4 comes with a bite because you can't recapture here, because I'll take back and then take on f2. So the idea is that after knight takes d6, now you have 2 knights guarding on e4, which is very important because if a knight can recapture on e4, it can defend f2. So knight takes d6 kind of throws a whole wrench in my position, and I knew I was going to be worse here if I don't do something drastic and try and complicate things, which is what I do. I play f4. Now the engine hates this move, but there's only one move that white can play that kind of saves him. He needs to play knight f5, and this kind of eliminates all my counterplay. After something like f takes g3, h takes g3, I can look to play something like, I don't know, queen h5 or queen g4, but I'm really kind of running out of play here. I probably have to go rook takes f5, e takes f5, queen takes f5, and look for some sort of drastic counterplay, but I just don't think it's there. I just think the only way that I survive here is if white plays rook takes c5 and allows mate in 1. But I think knight f5 would have just completely stunted my whole play. But he instead plays rook takes c5 and takes the bait and takes the free knight. But unfortunately here I play f takes g3. So importantly, don't take the knight on d6, or we're going to get into that sort of endgame type trade that I didn't want earlier, where I'm trading pieces into just a worse position because I'm down material. You don't want to do that. I want to press forward. I want to open up the G file, or sorry, open up the F file. So after rook takes c5, f takes g3. Can't take with the f pawn. You can take it with the queen, but then I take on f2. It's going to be kind of disgusting. If you take with the h pawn, which is what happens in the game, rook takes f2, king g1, queen h5, threatening mate on h2. Not really stoppable. Knight f1 and queen h3, and you can't stop mate on g2. So after, that's what happened in the game, but after f takes g3 here, I think white is in some serious trouble. It's kind of too late to shore up everything. Knight f5 is probably the best move here, but now it's like I get my choice of what I want to do. G takes h2, and I'm just threatening to make a queen, and I think white is going to be too slow to defend here. Versus one move sooner, knight f5 kind of blocks my whole position up. But overall, thought this was a pretty good game. I was able to complicate things, and my opponent missed the one opportunity in this position to play knight f5, and then after f takes g3, I'm in the driver's seat again, opening up the f file and causing all sorts of counterplay. But pretty interesting game. Definitely aggressive play that I definitely didn't have to go for, but shifting for the Kingside attack is definitely a fun way of playing, and good to get another win. And I will see you guys in the next video.